As I Lay Dying is back against all odds. I don't think anybody saw it coming until it actually happened, because at this point, I think we all know what Tim Lambesis did. Just crazy stuff. Little recap, you know, he just tried to get a hitman to kill his wife, I guess his now ex-wife, and then he got caught. There was a sting, and he went to prison for a few years. Obviously, As I Lay Dying disbanded. Everybody pretty much hated him, and rightfully so. When you do something like that, you don't get much love. And of course, a lot of them being surrounded by Christianity and whatnot, there was the idea of and the talk of forgiveness. And eventually they forgave him. He did his time. He showed remorse and growth. And there was a nice little mini documentary with the guys like writing these little, I don't know, poems or something like that, spoken word, talking about their experiences and stuff like that I caught. I'll throw up the, I'll probably put it in a card or something like that so you can check it out. And it just seems like, yeah, they're gelling, and obviously they are, because they're back with their new album, their 7th studio album, Shaped by Fire, and they absolutely have not skipped a beat. Not even a little bit. And sure, they probably had a lot of time, a lot of riffs saved up, a lot of things that where they could really just make a legitimate album, and that's exactly what it seems like what happened. And not only that, the production of the album is so good. It's something that I've always, it's unfortunate to me when say bands have good production, they're going to good producers, and then they just kind of fall off, and then they have some trash. And this was something that could have happened because they've always been with Metal Blade Records, and now they're on Nuclear Blast. And I had a little bit of an issue with Nuclear Blast, but just because of that legal shit that was going on with me, where they tried to make a legal claim against my video. Other than that, I've never had a problem with the bands and the stuff and everything that's been surrounding it. And so, fuck, they came on Nuclear Blast, and the production and everything seems this really good. Now, it's crazy. I'm seeing a lot of people, because I'm a little late with this review, right? And I've seen a lot of people say things like, this is a great album, this is some fantastic metalcore, and a lot of stuff like that. And I find it really interesting, but then at the same time, I understand, because there's a lot of people that would kind of cast metalcore to the side. They say metalcore is dead. There's people that say, what happened? What killed it? Stuff like that. And in my opinion, it never died. It never left. It's just perception. And to me, for a genre to stick around, or for a band to be killing it in that genre that is perceived to be dead, all you need is perception and talent. And say As I Lay Dying is one of those bands that have always had this very good perception. They've always been on the top of their game. I imagine they can put out a record that's a little lackluster, but because of the prestige of the name As I Lay Dying, people are still gonna love it. And so you have that, and then they're talented people. They're very talented. They're very good songwriters. They really know what they're doing. Tim is obviously a good vocalist. He sounds very beefy. And then Jordan, the drummer, is a fantastic drummer. I don't think he gets enough credit for how good of a drummer he is. And so they put together these fantastic songs. So even in all these years later, they can still put out a metalcore record and still be like, oh, metalcore isn't dead. It's like, yeah, it's not dead. It's just, a lot of people are trendy. And then when other people start saying things are dead, then other people don't want to stick around with something. But there's always going to be those bands that could put out a record in a genre that is perceived dead, and they will still rise to the top, and they will still bang. Parkway Drive is a great example of that. Parkway Drive's always been in the metalcore genre. They've switched it up a little bit in their previous albums, which I think they actually sound pretty good. But my favorite album of them is the 2012's Atlas, which is a very metalcore based. And around that time in 2012, metalcore was perceived to be dead. But that album's a banger, man. That album slaps. I love that album. So I'm just saying, Parkway Drive is one of those bands that have this fantastic perception. Their shows are always sold out. As I Lay Dying shows always sold out. So it doesn't really matter what genre they're doing, or the metalcore genre is dead. It's like, no, these motherfuckers are proving that it's not dead. Now, I love the genre of metalcore, but at the same time, I like when bands switch it up a little bit. Maybe just add a little bit of flavor to something. And that's the interesting thing about this album. It's such a safe album. It's really good. I really like it, but it's also really safe. I feel like there was a lot of experimentation as they were kind of moving forward, especially with their previous album. It was actually really heavy, and then they were getting a lot more thrashy in a lot of songs and a lot of things. So I'm like, okay, like I like what they're doing. I like where this is going. And this one kind of reminded me a lot more of some of the stuff. It was like a mixture of their breakout album, Shadows Are Security, because that was the one that really put them on the map. Well, there's a lot of riffs that were very just safe and poppy and catchy, which I always love, but they also kept the upbeat, you know, BPMs. Like, this album's a lot faster than like their stuff before. You know, there's this little breakdown in the song Blinded that just, I don't know, for some reason it's just sticking in my head, and it's nothing new, it's nothing you haven't heard before, but for some reason when they do it, when As I Lay Dying does it, it just sounds so good. Undertow is another one of those songs that has those breakdowns that, like I said, people have done it before, but when they do it, it just sounds so good. Gatekeepers is one of those tracks that I talked about with their thrash influence. It just sounds insanely thrashy. And it actually, I was like, is this like a cover or something? Like, forgive my ignorance or something. Like, it's most likely an original single, but it just has a sound and feel to it where I'm like, are they covering a song? Because it's so out of their element of like just pure thrash, and I like it. And this album just keeps coming with bangers. You have The Wreckage, My Own Grave, which was the first song they released last year with the music video that kind of, you know, showcased that, yeah, sorry guys, I fucked up, you know, I dug my own grave, all that, and which I personally think that's the best song on their album. I think that's the reason why they released it first. But they just keep coming with more bangers. Take What's Left is a good track. It's kind of reminiscent of The Sound of Truth, which isn't a bad thing. Redefine is another fantastic track. It has a pretty big chorus and has a breakdown that's very reminiscent of Born of Osiris. And the last two tracks are fine. The outro was like, it was alright. It didn't really like signify like this is the last track on the album, which I usually appreciate when bands and when people just try to do that, to kind of like give it almost somewhat of a concept, but at the same time, you know, it's not necessary. To me, it just added points. You know, like say the song Redefined sound much more of like an ending to the album to me, and then it wasn't. So I don't know, it just feels good when you're just done listening to something, you're like, that was a fucking ride, you know what I mean? And yeah, you can tell it's the end of the album, but meh. So the songwriting was really great. Everyone sounds on point, the production's on point. Like, there's no like songs on this album that are just complete trash, like just total fillers. And like I said, I'm not surprised because they've had a lot of time to get the best stuff together. I mean, it's been years since As I Lay Dying was, you know, active, and so it makes sense that after so much time has passed, they would be able to put together a really good album. And I think moving forward will be the ultimate test for them to see like what they have next, and it could be a lot, man. People can write a lot of songs in years, you know what I mean? So they could have a lot of bangers on hand, and they just seem like they're on top of their game. And I gotta say, you know, as far as recommendation, yeah, I would highly recommend you listening to this album. You know, especially if you're an As I Lay Dying fan, you've already listened to it. I'm sure you loved it. But for someone who's like casually into metal, I would highly recommend this. You can show like this is a really good album, and there's a really good story behind it. I think everything that's involved around this is just so interesting and so fascinating, and that's what makes it so much better. Like, it would have sucked if they came back and they just had a trash album, because then it would just absolutely tank them. Even though people love the As I Lay Dying brand, if this album was terrible, then it would be like, well, I guess Tim killed the band too. But that's it, guys. Let me know what you thought of this album, and if you have any suggestions on reviews, put them in the comment section below. Make sure you like this video if you dug this, and have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video.